Hey, Milo here, and let me tell you something about love. Well, love totally sucks. At least that's how I felt after my cheating ex Deanna broke my heart. Ouch. Deanna's 16 months and 15 days older than me. Not that I was counting or anything. I first met her in the park one morning. The heel on her shoe had broken, and being a sucker for a damsel in distress, I ran to the nearest store and bought her an emergency pair of flip-flops. She offered to take me out to lunch to say thank you. Then we hit it off. And that's how we started dating. We quickly fell madly in love despite the age difference. But then she had to go off to college. But it would just take a year being apart from each other because she'd made me promise to apply to the same school as her so we could be together. The future sounded amazing. I couldn't wait till graduation and start a new life with her in a new city. It was our 10-month anniversary, so I tried to be romantic and showed up at her place with a surprise bunch of flowers. But that's when I caught her in bed with some college guy. Talk about a bummer. I actually think I felt my heart snapped in two. I was so angry, I threw the bouquet to the ground and didn't forget to stomp on them a few times on my way out. So, I took the train home and turned into that miserable guy who hates love. To make it even worse, Valentine's Day was approaching and loved-up couples were everywhere. Ugh, what a disgusting sight. If I couldn't have a happy Valentine's Day, then neither could anyone else. So I decided to mess with them. My friends were the money-making kind, so naturally, they wanted to cash in on the day of love. If your heart is still intact, then you have no idea how much it sucks feeling heartbroken and being surrounded by chocolates, flowers, and fluffy teddy bears holding hearts. But I'd already agreed to help them as I figured I could spend the extra money on a gift for Deanna. But obviously, this was pointless now. I'm not the kind of guy to bail on my friends. So that's why I ended up in the park with a pull cart full of soppy items. Ugh. There were gooey eyes couples everywhere. I didn't know if I wanted to vomit or scream. I saw a couple walking toward me, so I decided to make this more interesting. Hello, sir. Can I interest you in a beautiful bouquet of roses to show your lovely mother here how much you love her? He stared at me in confusion and clumsily said no, while the girlfriend glared at me in anger as they're walking away. She kept hitting her boyfriend's arm, asking in an annoying girly tone, "Why didn't you tell him I wasn't your mom? Do I look that old? I can't believe this. You didn't even correct him." And then the guy had to calm her down in despair. Priceless. After that, I said it to every couple that came up to me. But then one of my friends noticed that I was chasing customers away with my dumb jokes, so she kicked me off the project. Oh well, it beat being around lovesick couples. So the day after, I had no schedule and was sitting in my bedroom watching an action film that had no romance in it and minding my own business when my sister barged into my room and told me that I had to babysit the neighbor's kid so she could go on some spontaneous date with her boyfriend. Apparently, our parents decided last minute to go out of town. So seeing as my sister's still dating in secret, her and her boyfriend thought that this was the perfect timing for them to hang out. Of course, I didn't agree to babysit, but she led the little kid into my room, said to me, "It's not like you have any Valentine plans anyway." Then she ran off. This little brat. Unlike my sister, I wasn't just going to abandon some little kid. So I begrudgingly took her to the mall and bought her an ice cream. When she finished that, she started whining at me that she wanted candy. Ugh, yawn. Kids are draining. Looking around at all the loved-up couples, I had a eureka moment. I told her I'd buy all the candy she wanted if she went up to this one couple, hugged the guy, and said, "Daddy, let's go home. I miss Mom." Turns out, she's a little daredevil, and she did it without question. Watching the shocked look on their faces was priceless. After a while of doing this, I bought the kid candy as promised. We sat on the bench laughing while thinking back on our achievement. We had so much fun. Then, I spotted a girl who'd turned me down in middle school. She was there with some guy. I quickly told the kid to hide behind the bench and winked, "Watch and learn, noob." Then I marched up to them, grabbed the guy's wrist and yelled, "So, is it because of this girl that we had to break up, you heartless swine?" Then I ran off pretending to cry. I hid behind the bench with the kid. Both of us laughed our heads off and ate candy as we watched the couple fighting in confusion. After a while, I dropped the kid back home. Then I went back to mine. Through the window, I saw that my sister and her boyfriend had already been back from their date and were saying goodbye outside, so I sneaked a pic of them. I couldn't wait to blackmail her with that and demand her to pay me extra money so that our parents wouldn't know about them. I waited in the living room with a smirk on my face, but 10 minutes passed and she still hadn't appeared. I looked through the window to see them kissing, for like the zillionth time already. Ugh! She clearly didn't spare a thought for her heartbroken brother. So I decided to be Cupid and grant them their wish. I raced outside with a big roll of duct tape and ran circles around them as I stuck their heads together when they were kissing. Now that is the best way to de-stress. I felt much lighter with every lap I ran. They both screamed out and tried to pull free, but they were well and truly stuck. So I left them there to untangle themselves and I whizzed off. The next morning, my sister gave me the most furious look across the table during breakfast. I swear there was fire in her eyes. But too bad she couldn't do anything to me as Mom was right there. I could even see a little bruise on her forehead as a result of my prank. I had to try so hard to hold my laughter. I felt this tingling feeling between the thrill and satisfaction, which made me totally forget about my failed relationship. I got such a kick out of messing with people's perfect love lives. And so I continued with my pranks on unsuspecting couples. Then, one time I walked up to a couple in the street and said to the girl, "Why are you here? Didn't you say you're working overtime? Can't I trust you anymore? I'll be home waiting for your explanation." Then walked off while giggling. But this time, a hand suddenly grabbed my shoulder. Then as I turned around, the guy punched me. Then I passed out. Talk about embarrassing. I woke up dazed and confused on the sidewalk with this cute girl looking down at me. The guy had left, thank goodness. The girl seemed so relieved that I'd woken up, and she kept telling me that I must have mistaken her with someone else because she didn't know me at all. I was too embarrassed, so I had to nod in agreement. She called a taxi and helped me get home. On the ride, she apologized because her boyfriend had a short temper, and they were already arguing at that moment. She told me her name was Vanessa. Then we switched contact details so she could check up on me. Then, one morning at school, I noticed her in the hallway. Turns out she went to my school, but I'd never spotted her before. She saw me too and smiled and waved over at me. We started spending lunchtimes together. She bought me cheese fries and gave me her delicious homemade cookies. She said she wanted to make it up to me. We unintentionally grew closer, and the next thing I knew, I found myself really fond of this girl. But she's taken, and it's with a jerk. She told me all about her boyfriend. He's called Kane, and he went to a different school, thankfully. She said he was a sweet guy, but sometimes he lashed out, and one time, he even hit her. It's clear her boyfriend's a doofus, but she was too blinded by love to see it. I wanted to whisk her away and show her what being with a good guy was really like. But to be honest, I was scared of being beaten up by him again. I opened up to her about my ex and how she messed me up. Vanessa listened and never judged. I felt so at ease being around her. Then one afternoon, I saw her in the hallway after class, and it looked like she'd been crying. So I went up to her and said, "Vanessa, are you okay?" She forced out a smile and replied, "Yeah, it's just boyfriend stuff." That's the moment when I decided that enough was enough. Scary boyfriend or not, no matter what it takes, I had to tell her my feelings and save her from him. I offered to drive her home. Then I planned to confess my feelings to her on the way home. But to my annoyance, she said it's okay as her sister was picking her up that day. Then she waved goodbye to me and ran over to a car. Wait a minute. I knew that car. Her sister, the girl in the car. That was my ex. Talk about a dilemma. How on earth did this happen? I swore to never see my ex again. I couldn't bear the thought of breathing the same air as her, but now I had a crush on her sister. Help! To make it even worse, I've told Vanessa all about how much I hate my ex. How can I let her know that the ex in question turned out to be her sister? Help me. This is so crazy, and I have no idea how to wriggle my way out of this one. Hey guys, it's me, Milo. I'm back again to share the next part of my story with you. Firstly, here's a quick recap. So my ex Deanna cheated on me with some college doofus, and in doing so broke my heart. So I decided that if I couldn't be happy, then neither could anyone else. So, around Valentine's Day, I messed with other couples. One such prank led me to meet Vanessa. Then, I found myself falling for her. The problem is she has a boyfriend, and he's a jerk. And the even bigger problem is that I just found out that she's my ex's little sister. And there's a chance I may have told Vanessa some pretty harsh truths about her sister. But in my defense, back then I didn't realize they were siblings. At first, I had no idea how to deal with the situation, so I just decided to avoid everyone. If I saw Vanessa at school, then I darted around the corner into the restroom behind an overweight kid. Anything that meant I didn't have to face her. The problem was I found myself missing her too much. I felt like I couldn't live without her. So no matter the consequences, I had to do something now. So I walked up to her at lunch and told her I'd been avoiding her because I couldn't cope with seeing her so upset over her boyfriend. That didn't deserve her and it was wrong of him to hit her, and she should get out now while she still could. Then I told her I'd always be there for her, and hopefully as more than just friends. She seemed touched. She knew there were a lot of problems in their relationship too, but admitted she'd been in denial about it all. She held my hand and said that she had feelings for me too, but now we had to deal with her boyfriend first. Ugh, her boyfriend Kane. He was the short-tempered kind of guy who solves everything with a punch. He will never accept it if she breaks up with him. It would dent his pride too much, and probably result in him being violent toward her. While to be honest, I'm too much of a coward. I couldn't protect her in that case. If he knew she was breaking up with him to be with me, well, then that's the end for me. So I thought long and hard about this, and then, voila, I derived a master plan. If he couldn't handle Vanessa breaking up with him, then we'll make him break up with her. Wow, am I a genius or what? The next day I told Vanessa the plan. It's simple. She just needs to intentionally look sloppy, stinky, and ugly in front of him so he would soon tire of her. When she first heard it, she wasn't impressed and said, "That's so embarrassing. I can't do that. No girl wants to look like a mess." I told her that she would only have to do it in front of him. Besides, he went to a different school to us, so she could still look like her usual pretty self in class. Eventually, she agreed to do it. And as I expected, just after a few weeks of playing ugly, Kane had enough and broke up with her. Vanessa came around to mine and excitedly told me the news. She'd gone to Kane's place without any makeup on, wearing some stained oversized shirt, her hair a mess, and she hadn't even brushed her teeth. Then, when he ended it with her, she pretended to cry. I couldn't believe this good girl could act pretty well too. Then, seizing the occasion, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she of course said yes. Then we kissed, and well, talk about amazing. She was such a better kisser than her sister. We kept our relationship low-key at first. This worked for her as she didn't want to rub our relationship in Kane's face. And it worked for me as I didn't want Deanna to find out. Then, after a month of dating, she dropped the bomb. "I want you to meet my sister. She's in college and lives in another city, but she's currently home for vacation. I should officially introduce you to her first, since we don't know when she will leave again." I could have screamed out, but instead, I kept my cool and asked to see a picture of her. Then on seeing one, I feigned being shocked and said that this girl always picked on me during middle school, and I was still traumatized from it. That those were the darkest years of my life. I mean, I didn't actually know Deanna back in middle school, probably because she was a year older than me, but Vanessa didn't need to know this. Vanessa felt bad for me and said she didn't know that there was that side to her sister. She said it was true that Deanna was pretty cranky in middle school, but thought that was just puberty. She never realized she was actually a mean girl, especially not to a younger kid. By this point, I might as well have been cast in some soap opera as my performance was a class act. I must have looked so pathetic that she told me it's okay, and she'd not mention Deanna anymore until I felt comfortable about it. This solved my ex problem, for now, but it didn't solve the Kane problem, as he found out about Vanessa and me, and he wasn't happy. My guess is Kane must have stalked Vanessa and spotted us together. Then he followed me home, as that crazy dude showed up on my doorstep and yelled at me to stay away from her. Well, I couldn't blame him. No one on earth ever likes their ex's new partner. Not only did this crazy guy know where I lived, but now my sister Kayla also knew about my relationship with Vanessa. Since she's still bitter about the Valentine prank I pulled on her, recap, it involved her, her boyfriend, and a whole lot of duct tape. So it wasn't overly surprising when she smirked at me and said, "Just you wait and see. I haven't forgot about what you did to me on Valentine's, and now seems like the perfect time for revenge." I repeated her words in a mocking tone to annoy her, but to be honest, deep down in my gut, I did feel on the anxious side. She's just as crazy of a prankster as I am. Now, I always had to be on guard. After that, my sister and Kane seemed to take turns to ruin our dates. Geez, didn't they have anything better to do? One time I was kissing Vanessa out in the yard. Suddenly there was water pouring down from nowhere. We were completely soaked. I looked around and saw my sister standing on the second floor balcony, holding an empty bucket, and said, "Oops, I was just trying to water the flowers." Then on a movie date night, Kane showed up at the same film, sat in the row behind us, and kept on kicking the back of my seat, and even threw popcorn at me. Later, when I went home and checked the hood of my hoodie, there were all kinds of trash and enough popcorn for the next movie date. How childish. It was all trivial stuff, really, but it was getting annoying. Then, on our 2-month anniversary, I told Vanessa to dress up all nice, then I took her to this swanky Italian restaurant. The meal was amazing, until when I reached into my pocket and took out my wallet to pay. Then, to my horror, a picture of a bikini-wearing girl fell out of nowhere. I was so shocked and just froze in confusion. Vanessa looked so upset. I explained that I'd never seen that picture before in my life, and I had no idea who the girl was. Then the waiter showed up with the card machine. I clumsily opened my wallet, but none of my cards were there. I searched my pockets again in panic, but nothing, not even a penny. Bright red, I muttered out that I had no money on me. This was the worst moment of my life. I thought I was going to lose my girlfriend and have to pot wash. But then I heard arguing coming from outside. Me, Vanessa, and the waiter all stared out the window and saw my sister and Kane yelling at each other. We stepped outside and listened in on their conversation. Turns out my sister had taken all the cards out of my wallet so I wouldn't be able to pay. She's been peeking in from the window all night long and spying on us, just to wait and see my pathetic face as I found out that all of my cards have vanished into thin air. But then she was disappointed that it didn't go to plan because I was busy explaining to Vanessa about some stupid photo instead. That's when she met eyes with some crazy guy who was standing next to her and laughing his ass off in satisfaction, which you can already tell who he was, the mastermind of that bikini photo prank. Kayla got annoyed and picked a fight with Kane because now she felt like her prank had been overlooked and she wasn't happy about it. It's kind of dumb, really. As if they weren't so proud and headstrong, they could have watched me miserably try to squirm my way out of the no cards and picture of another girl fiasco. Instead, they'd been caught red-handed setting me up. Vanessa pointed at Kane and said to the waiter, "He'll pay for our meal." Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me away. So yeah, we left my sister and Kane to their arguing, and I took Vanessa home. Then, a few days later, Kane sent me a message. "It's amazing what delving into your past can bring up. I know all about you and Deanna. Set me up on a date with your sister or else I'll tell Vanessa everything." Dang it. Who would have thought after that stupid incident that crazy Kane guy would catch feelings for my evil little sister? In hot sweats, I replied that my sister already had a boyfriend. Unsurprisingly, Kane didn't care about this factor. He told me a time and a place and said my sister better be there else he wouldn't just tell Vanessa about Deanna. He'd also 100% ruin my life. OMG, what am I supposed to do now? Do I really have to set up a date for my little sister with a crazy guy like Kane? Oh well, she's not really sane either, but she's still my sister. But if I don't agree to help him, then who knows what could happen to me tomorrow? I mean, I don't want Vanessa to find out about Deanna, and I also don't want to end up a beaten up mess. I'm so torn. This is killing me. Hey guys, Milo here. Again. I'm going to share with you the final part of my awesome story, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. For those of you who are struggling to keep up, in the second part, I decided to make a move with Vanessa, despite knowing that she's the little sister of my horrible ex. And also, she was dating this thug, Kane. The only thing that matters is that she had feelings for me too. So I convinced Vanessa to dress sloppily so Kane would end it with her. Of course, my genius plan worked. Then we started dating officially. But I didn't want Vanessa to find out the truth about my past relationship with her sister, so I made up some ridiculous story to her about how I wasn't ready to face seeing her beloved sis yet, as she was the mean girl that had made my life a living hell back in middle school. Anyway, Kane found out about Deanna being my ex, and now he's threatening to tell Vanessa everything unless I set him up on a date with my sister Kayla. I know, complicated, huh? I swear my life is just one big soap opera. Anyway, tuck luff, sis. Seems like you have a date with Creepy Kane this Saturday. Okay, so the fact she already has a boyfriend makes things somewhat complicated. I guess there was only one thing for it. I just have to trick her into going on the date. So Kayla loves singing. I mean, she's tone deaf, but she thinks she's Katy Perry or something. So I figured that the most logical way to trick her into meeting Kane was to come up with some story about a talent agent being interested in her. I told her that I had a friend who knew a talent agent, and this agent would just love to have dinner with her on Saturday and talk about her career. At first, she raised her eyebrow and said, "As if." So I let out a long sigh, then replied, "As much as it pains me to admit that you have talent, well, you do, so meet the agent, or don't, as if I care." I shrugged, then I walked off. I hadn't got far when she shouted after me, "Yeah, okay, I'll be there." Result: I knew that my sister wouldn't be able to resist the prospect of getting one up on me. It's a shame for her that this would never happen. Of course, I wasn't a complete jerk. Kane's a volatile idiot, so the least I could do was secretly follow her to make sure she was safe. I sat in the restaurant in my sunglasses, stick-on mustache, and baseball cap. Talk about the master of disguise. I should open up a spy business. Kayla was far too busy droning on about herself to notice me. She didn't seem to recognize Kane as being Vanessa's ex either. Probably because he'd actually washed his hair. And was that aftershave I could smell? I overheard her say to him, "So do you really think I can make it as a singer?" Kane looked confused, but he just shrugged and said, yeah, sure." Even though she wouldn't quit going on about her singing, he still continued to flirt with her. Lame things like he told her she looked pretty and stroked her arm. Ugh. At one point, Kayla started singing. Kane looked dumbfounded, and the waiter walking past actually covered his ears. It was so funny, even I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then she must have had a light bulb moment about who he was, as she gave him a scrutinizing look, stood up, then said, "Wait a minute, yeah, excuse me? I need the bathroom." As she stormed across the room, I knew she was bailing. Oh no. If she did that, then Kane would tell Vanessa everything, and my life would be over. So I hurried after her and shouted her name. At first, she gave me a weird look, so I removed my sunglasses and fake mustache. She looked pretty mad. But I knew that I had to tell her all about how Kane was blackmailing me. I even managed to fake some tears. At first, she seemed furious and she shouted at me. A lot. But then she seemed to calm down and she smirked. Uh-oh. That smirk didn't look good. She told me, "Okay, I'll go back inside, but this means you have to do everything I say, all month." I didn't like the sound of this, but I had little choice, so I agreed. She went back inside and the date seemed to go well. The problem was now I didn't have to worry about Kane. Instead, I had to worry about my sister. Why do these situations happen to me? Has karma for messing with all those couples come back to bite me? I had to do all Kayla's chores, including staying home every weekend to babysit the kid next door. Ugh. Then I also had to message her actual boyfriend and apologize for the Valentine's prank I played on him. A reminder for you, it involved my super speed and a whole lot of duct tape. Things got weirder though, as Kane seemed totally smitten with my sister. He sent her flowers, then he sent her a giant teddy bear. And he even messaged me saying he wanted to assure me he would never hurt her. Okay, this was weird. It seems my sister had made the once thug-like Kane turn soft. Thing is, she binned his flowers, gave the teddy to the neighbor's kid, and well, made it clear she didn't like him. Wow, love can really mess someone up. Even someone like Kane. I guess he liked her coldness toward him. I suppose it's far more of a challenge than being with someone all kind and sweet like Vanessa. Kayla had started selling home-baked goods, cookies and things. They were tough, burned, and gross, but people seemed to buy them. So guess who she roped into playing delivery driver? Talk about lame. What made it even worse was I had a date with Vanessa one day. But no, now I had to deliver inedible biscuits. Being the smart guy I am, I found a way to get around this. So I picked Vanessa up from the library, then went off to make the deliveries. The plan was to drop them off as quickly as possible, then Vanessa and I could have date night. Vanessa didn't mind. In fact, she thought it was sweet that I was helping Kayla out. Ha! We got to the delivery address, and it was a nail salon. I left Vanessa in the car and rushed inside. Then I saw who the customer was, and oh my God. There standing in front of me was Deanna. Talk about a shocker. I was so surprised that I actually dropped the delivery. I muttered out something about how my sister would reimburse her. Then I went to leave. She grabbed my arm and said she wanted to apologize to me properly for cheating on me. Now was not the time for this. Talk about awkward. I tried to yank my arm away, but she kept clinging to me. Then Vanessa suddenly walked in. I guess she must have seen us through the shop window. She yelled out, "Deanna, what are you doing? Let him go! Stop being so mean! I didn't want to believe that you ever teased him back in middle school, but here's the proof!" Deanna looked confused as she replied, "What are you doing here? And what do you mean tease?" They yelled back and forth in confusion for a while until Deanna blurted out, "He's my ex-boyfriend!" Cue two furious women staring at me in anger, asking for an explanation. Now would be the perfect time for a UFO to come and abduct me, but no such luck. I had some explaining to do, so we went to the coffee shop next door, and I confessed that Deanna was actually my ex. But I only found out about it after dating Vanessa, so I lied because I didn't know how to handle that awkward situation. I begged them for forgiveness. I was so scared. I was basically staring down at the table the whole time. But then suddenly, I heard giggles. Deanna started to laugh and said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Oh my, Milo. Vanessa joined in. Okay, that makes sense, since he's the one who also came up with the ridiculous plan for me to break up with my ex by playing ugly. He really has a unique sense of solving problems. Okay, so I never thought they'd find any of this funny, but at least they're not mad at me. So in the end, I got a proper apology from Deanna. We're cool now, and I can freely date Vanessa too. Turns out life is far simpler when you don't end up in a web of lies. As for Kane, well, he doesn't bother Vanessa anymore. Instead, he's still pining after my sister. I actually think he might have a chance with her, as she broke up with her boyfriend because that dude has been constantly bailing on her to hang out with his friends. Even though I've seen a different side to Kane, I don't know how I'd feel about having him as my actual brother-in-law one day. But yeah, I got the girl, so everything turned out pretty great. As for pranks, well, I can't rule out never doing the odd one or two in the future, but I promise to never mess with loved-up couples again. I've learned my lesson on that one.
So everyone loves Christmas, right? Trust me. It's not so great when your boss fires you in November. How was I supposed to buy presents now? Still, I tried to see the positives. I hated that boring, underpaid, overworked job anyway. My ex-boss Adrian was the worst. He's a crazy perfectionist who always gave me ridiculous deadlines, complained about every tiniest mistake, and flipped out if things didn't go his way. No wonder he was still single at 32. Who could ever stand him? I wouldn't miss him, or my tragic ass-kissing coworkers. Anyways, on the bright side, I'd get to spend the entire holiday season with my family and my boyfriend Matt in peace, without being bothered by any annoying work emails. I, in fact, have invited Matt over for Thanksgiving dinner with my parents and plan to spend this cozy weekend with my loved ones. Then, the day before Thanksgiving, I packed up my car and was about to go and pick Matt up when my phone beeped.
Sonia, I don't think Thanksgiving is a good idea. I just think we need some time apart. Hope you have a great time. See you around, X.
What? Had he just broken up with me over text message? I immediately rang him up, but he'd turned his phone off. Just great. Here I was stuck at home for the entire Thanksgiving and Christmas period, being a jobless, boyfriendless loser. To make it worse, even my little sister Gina had a boyfriend who adored her. This is so unfair. One night, my parents were out to buy a Christmas tree, and Gina had her boyfriend over to help put up Christmas lights and decorations. Well, needless to say, love was in the air, and that festive vibe didn't help at all with my misery. So I refused to join them and curled up in my room. Feeling so lonely and miserable, I downloaded Tinder. I usually wasn't one for dating apps, but I was feeling so low, I would have happily spoken to anyone. I didn't feel like being me. I was sick of being me, so I used the fake name Crystal and just put some artsy scenery pictures up. I could be whoever I wanted to be. And you know what? It seemed to be working, as a few guys wanted to talk to me. Okay, most of them were also bored, or only after one thing, but then there's this guy called Carl that caught my attention. Like me, he had no pictures of himself, but instead, he had images of song lyrics and movie quotes, including the quote, "The more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you." I love the movie Lost in Translation, so I sent him a message telling him he had good taste in films, and he messaged me back complimenting the scenery photos I took. After that, we started chatting days and nights. We talked about everything, from the dumb to the meaningful. He actually helped me out a lot and made the Christmas period bearable for me. It was all going great, until Christmas Eve. He sent me a message to wish me a Merry Christmas, along with,
"Let's meet up for a drink."
Oh no. Even though the app said he was only a few miles away, I wasn't ready for meetups. I actually was nervous upon reading his text. My heart was pounding, and I found myself worrying about what he would think of me when we met. What if he didn't look like what I imagined? What if he'd be disappointed when he saw me? Why does that even matter, though? Unless I developed feelings for him. I don't even know anymore. But it's certain that I couldn't face him just yet. I politely refused his invitation. He was cool about it. Then we still continued to talk like normal. I survived Christmas, and then for New Year's Eve, Gina persuaded me to go to a party with her boyfriend and friends. I wasn't really keen to join, but I guessed I needed to do something to stop this gloominess. As I was walking in, I was so busy brushing off the snow on my shoulder that I bumped into a guy. To my horror, I looked up and saw that it was my old boss, Adrian. Why was he here, in my hometown? He was also shocked, but managed to smile at me. But I just gave him a glare, rolled my eyes, flipped back my hair, then strode off. What a mood killer! I grabbed a drink and sat in the corner in an attempt to avoid bumping into Adrian again. Gina found me and tried dragging me onto the dance floor, but I refused. Then she winked at me and in a tipsy voice said, "You need a man to dance with. I'll be right back." 5 minutes later, she excitedly waved at me and shouted over, "Found one!" I just want to facepalm as I saw her dragging Adrian by the hand over to me. Talk about awkward. But still, I mumbled out a hi, downed a shot for courage, and then chatted to him. Okay, it turns out he was visiting his grandparents who lived around here, and he was actually an okay guy to talk to. After I spent most of the night talking to him, he bought a drink, then said to me,
"I have to admit that after the death stare you gave me on entry, I was afraid for my life. But it turns out I've enjoyed chatting with you."
"Sorry," I blushed.
"No, it's okay. I'd be mad with me too if I were you. Letting you go from work was nothing personal. I had to let one person go, and I only chose you because I knew you were wasted there."
Thanks, I guess," I laughed. "Let's get another shot." Okay, so maybe Adrian wasn't that bad of a person after all. And I don't know if it's because of all the drinks we downed, the atmosphere, or the fact that everyone else around us was sharing New Year's kisses, that I almost felt like Adrian looked like he wanted to kiss me on the strike of midnight too. And I too didn't dodge it. Luckily, nothing happened. I mean, that would have been weird, right? The next day, Adrian messaged me, saying he would help me set up a job interview at a big media company. Wow, that's amazing! Now I had no excuse to sulk around anymore. I needed to get back to the city and sort my life out. Only, I still couldn't get Carl out of my head. I guessed these feelings were real. To clear up my mind, I decided to confess to him online. But then he messaged me back saying,
"I think you're great, and I love talking to you, but I have a crush on my coworker. I'm sorry, but I'd like to stay friends."
Ouch! Rejection hurt! Back in the city, I felt lonelier than ever. Yes, I'd got the new job and it was going well, but I was sick of seeing loved-up couples everywhere. To make it worse, Gina came to stay with me for a while, and she's always on the phone, giggling and FaceTiming her boyfriend. Now I couldn't even escape lovebirds in my own apartment. Feeling down, I messaged Carl again, just casually asked him to meet up later this weekend when I would be back home again for my mom's birthday. Well, to be honest, I just couldn't give him up just yet. Maybe he would change his mind when we met, or I would be able to get over him once we meet. But he made up some excuse to reject me again. That was it, I told myself. It's official over now. Depressed, I called Adrian up for a drink. He arrived looking kinda cute, But the sting of rejection was still on my mind. I confided to Adrian, and I asked him if he thought Carl was a fool for turning me down. Adrian slammed his drink onto the table and turned to me and said,
"You're the fool. Why are you stupidly chasing after some guy online? He might not even be real. He might be some 60-year-old pervert. Why won't you just open your eyes and look in front of you?"
Then he stood up, locked me in his arms, and tried to kiss me. What? I was so mad I pulled myself away from him and slapped him straight across the face before I stomped off. He was meant to be my friend, not some guy after just one thing. I was so hurt, I cried while texting Carl about what just happened, but he didn't reply. The next day, I woke up with a pounding head and puffy eyes. I checked my phone. Adrian had called me, but nothing from Carl. He must have been too busy with his coworker, huh? Suddenly, I heard the door knock. My sister answered it and told me it was Adrian. I reluctantly went out to see him. I guess I needed to at least hear him out. He was standing there looking sheepish as he said,
"I'm so sorry about last night, Sonia. I was slightly drunk and I guess I've read the signals wrong. For what it's worth, I think that Carl guy is a fool for letting you go. You're amazing."
I wasn't in the mood to talk to him, so said it was fine, then told him to leave. I closed the door and threw myself on the sofa. Then about 10 minutes later, there was someone at the door again. I answered it, and there was Adrian, but this time he changed his outfit. Confused, I grumbled, "What else do you want?" Then he politely greeted me.
"Hello, Crystal. Let me introduce myself. I'm Carl. We've been talking for months. I guess, if you think about it, the more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you."
I stared at him open-mouthed. He just quoted Lost in Translation, and he'd called me Crystal. Then reality struck me. OMG! All this time, and Adrian was Carl? I dragged him inside. We sat down on the sofa and talked everything out. It's so unreal. Turns out the guy I've been chasing after is literally right in front of me. How ironic! I was so happy I hugged him and broke down crying, apologizing. Right then, my sister walked out from the kitchen, took one look at us, and laughed out, "Well, well, well. Isn't this the awful boss who fired you? But most importantly, isn't he the guy I brought to you at the New Year's Eve party? You two owe me big time." We all burst out laughing. So, yeah, after a horrid holiday season, now I finally could start a promising new year with a great job and a pretty awesome new boyfriend. I guess things always have a way of working out in the end, right? Thank you for listening to my story, and wish you guys a good start into the new year. Hi, my name is Mia, and I lived the first 14 years of my life trapped in a lie. I never left the house, and by that, I mean never. I grew up believing that I was allergic to the sun, and if I stayed out in it too long, I'd turn to dust. Dumb, I know, but I was just a kid, and I had no reason not to believe what my mom told me. On the rare occasions, I went out into the backyard, and my skin turned all blotchy and puffy. Looking back on it now, it's clear Mom had given me something to bring my skin out in a rash, but at the time, I honestly believed the sun was out to get me. I remember peering behind the curtain and watching the kids play out in the street. They looked like they were having so much fun, and I felt so sad that I couldn't join them. Mom charged into my room, quickly closed the curtain, and then she grabbed my shoulders and shouted at me, "Mia, never do that again. The sun can come in through the curtains and turn you to a crisp. Is that what you want?" I remember sobbing as I shook my head. I never did peer out at the other kids again after that. I could still hear them playing, so I would close my eyes and imagine that I was out there with them, playing chase and learning how to ride a bike. I so wanted that to be my reality. The problem was I didn't have that life. Instead, I was stuck inside with no friends. I'd never even touched the grass before. Mom homeschooled me. She took this really seriously and got really mad when I didn't understand something. One time, I gave the wrong answer to a math equation, so she screamed at me, "You're such an idiot! I've had enough of you!" Then she locked me in my room without dinner. Crazy, huh? But back then, I was so scared that from then, I didn't dare to ask her anything. It's always just Mom and me, and no one else in my house. She said my dad had died when I was a baby. Again, I had no reason not to believe her. I never had a phone to talk to anyone, and who did I have to talk to? Still, I remember being fascinated by this strange object she often pressed to her ear. Whenever she was on the phone, I believed she was talking to herself. Mom would lock me in the house while she went out. Then when she returned, she'd just throw me something to eat. A sandwich, a packet of potato chips, and sometimes she changed the meal to bread. She never really cooked. I'm not even sure if she knew how to. My house was a simple old house. There's not many things in it. No TV, no sofa, a basic kitchen. I mean, it looks like an abandoned house, but I thought it was normal because I'd not seen any other houses. My room was small, cold, and dark. I only had a hard mattress and some itchy old pillows. I didn't even have a bed cover. I used to shiver myself to sleep each night and dream of being out there playing with the other kids. Then, things got worse when I turned 10. Mom stormed into my room, gave me some food and a pile of books, and told me that I had to stay in my room from now on, so she knew I was safe. I put up with 4 years of this. It was horrible. She chucked my meals at me and gave me new books once a week. I felt so hungry and lonely all the time. Then one day, when evening arrived and she still hadn't fed me, my hunger pains got the better of me. So I tried the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. So I snuck downstairs. That's when I saw Mom pacing the room, her phone in hand. She said, "Yes, I know, Toby. Well, she's finally of age, so when are you coming to get her?" Then she said, "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be counting the money." I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. Then I heard Mom say, "Well, I suppose I better go and feed her then." I quickly darted upstairs and lay on my mattress. Mom appeared and passed me a sandwich and some water. She sat down next to me, which was odd, as she hardly ever did this. And she smiled at me as she said, "We need to get you cleaned up, and I've bought you a new dress to wear." "Why, Mom?" I asked her. Her smile faded into a scowl, and she kicked my mattress. "Why do you always have to be so insolent?" I didn't want to upset her further, so I didn't ask her anything else. Then the next day, Mom made me put the new dress on and let me out of my room. Then there was a knock at the door, and Mom brought this strange man in. I'd never interacted with anyone other than Mom before, so I just sat there, feeling afraid. He was around my mom's age and tall, really tall, and he had unkind eyes. He passed my mom an envelope, and she opened it and took out a lot of bits of paper. I know now that this was money, but back then, I didn't fully understand what it was. Mom counted it out, then nodded at him and said, "She's all yours."
Right. You're coming with me, sweetie.
He walked towards me. What? I stared at him open-mouthed.
Mia, you're going to live with this man now.
Mom said it like it was no big deal.
That's what happens when you turn 14. You have to leave.
But Mom, why? I don't know him. I won't go. Then she slapped me and shouted out loud, "Go with him. I'm done with you." That's when I realized that I couldn't live with this woman anymore. I ran out of the front door. Surely turning to dust was better than living with any of them. Only, as the sun touched my skin, it didn't burn. That's when I knew Mom had been lying to me all this time. So I started running without knowing where I was going. I could hear Mom and that Toby guy chasing and shouting after me, but I just kept on running. Every little sound freaked me out, as I didn't understand this world and the people in it. The next thing I remember is some woman shaking me and saying, "Sweetie, are you okay?" I was so afraid at first and curled up into a ball, but then she told me she wasn't going to hurt me, she just wanted to help me. She had kind eyes, not like Mom or that man. So I told her what had happened. She looked completely shocked, but she rang the police. So it turns out that when I was a baby, I was stolen. My mom isn't really my mom at all. She was some messed up woman who took me out of my pushchair and made some awful deal with that Toby man that he could buy me off her when I was 14. She didn't know my real parents. She just saw a chance to grab me, and she took it. It's horrible to think that she robbed me of a normal life, but I try not to dwell on this thought too much. I can't change the past. Then eventually, something amazing happened. My real parents were found. It was so emotional seeing them for the first time. They hugged me and we all just cried. They told me how they'd never stopped looking for me. And guess what? I found out I have a little sister called Izzy. I love hanging out with her and watching her play. She's the best. It's been hard. There's so much I've had to learn, such as how to interact with people and even how to eat with a knife and fork. My real parents have been so kind and patient with me. Now, at the age of 19, I have some sort of normal life. I still find many things confusing, and I struggle being around large crowds. I had to get used to sleeping on a bed, and I find computers the most confusing thing ever. But I managed to function in the big, wide world. As for my fake mom and Toby, well, they were both sentenced for their involvement in my kidnap and are now in jail for a very long time. I have a chance at leading a normal life in the normal world, and even though what happened to me was horrible, I'm not going to let those cruel people ruin my life. I finally have a loving family, and I know that with their care and support, I can get through anything. Hi, it's me, Bella again. Do you still remember my complicated love story with Ed, who's turned out to be the son of my big boss? Thank God I found out how much of a cheating jerk he was and broke free from that relationship. But then he again started to try hard to get me back. All the flowers and gifts must prove he still loved me, right? So I decided I was going to give him another chance. Only before I was able to tell him this, I overheard him talking to Ellie. It was pretty clear from their conversation that he only wanted to get back with me to hide the fact that he was still with Diane. Jim overheard them talking too, and he led me into the room and confronted them by saying, "You two, I don't know what's going on, but I'll protect Bella. Don't you dare hurt her, or else you'll have me to answer to." On hearing him say this, I looked up at him through teary eyes. Ed and Ellie were the worst type of people, but luckily for me, Jim was the best. Right now, I felt so vulnerable, but at least his kind words made me feel like I wasn't alone. He was like a big brother that always made me feel so safe. Then he led me outside, saying,
"Hell with those terrible people. Let's get out of here, Belle."
In a soulless state due to the shock, I followed him. He took me to the building rooftop, and it was good to breathe in some fresh air without anyone else gawping at me. We sat down, and he told me to take time to calm down and not to worry about the report that was due in that afternoon, as it could wait. He was looking at me with such caring eyes, and he even put his hand on mine as he said,
"And even if you feel like taking leave today, it's okay. I actually..."
He's so nice, but that made me feel kinda burdened, so I cut him off. "Jim, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you back there, I'm sure I would have fainted in front of them. And thank you for being so understanding. But you're still my boss, and I'm still an employee. We shouldn't let my personal issues affect work. And Jim, please, He tried interrupting me with,
Bella, listen.
and,
But Bella,
but I still carried on. I'm beyond grateful. But please, next time, you don't have to do that, especially in the office. That will give people something to talk about again. You know how they love to gossip about me already. He kept staring down at the ground and didn't say anything else. I forced a smile and wiped my tears away. I'll be fine. I just need a few minutes alone right now. Then I'll go finish that report. Don't worry, Chief. He looked at me and let out a sigh, got up, then patted me on the shoulder.
Okay, great. Just so you know, I've always got your back. I'll do anything to help you forget that jerk if you want.
He smiled and left. I sat there alone for a while. I don't know if it was the strong breeze making my eyes teary again, or that I'd just simply reached the peak of sorrow. Now I knew that Ed's affair with Diane wasn't just a mistake, but he really didn't love me anymore. And not only that, he clearly didn't care about me at all. Else, he wouldn't have been as heartless as to use me for his own sake. After that, I tried pushing my pain and heartache to one side and focusing on my work. But it was hard. I knew my colleagues were whispering nasty things about me. There were so many times when I went to make a coffee or walked into the toilets, and they'd go deadly silent and snigger in my direction. I couldn't focus on doing anything anymore, and even the simplest of jobs took me triple as long to do. It got to the point where I considered walking into Jim's office and quitting then and there. I already had my resignation email saved to my drafts. I love this job, but the people here are too toxic, and now I felt too suffocated. My career is important to me, but so is my pride. And right now, being here in this negative environment wasn't doing me any favors. And knowing Ed was so near to me, well, it made my situation even harder. Talking about Ed, obviously, the flowers and gifts had stopped. He hadn't tried to contact me once since I overheard them, which says it all, really. I tried my best to avoid him. I once even hid behind the men's toilet door in a panic as I caught sight of him in the hallway, which got both me and some guys in there freaked out. At that awkward moment, I thought to myself, hey, what am I doing? Why am I acting like such a coward? I realized that I had nothing to feel ashamed about. Ed was the one who treated me like dirt. He should be the one hiding, not me. I realized then and there that I shouldn't have to run away from the job I love and was good at because of a man too much of a coward to be honest with me. This was my dream job, and I will keep it. To hell with Ed. If anything, I have to stay here and show him what he missed out on. To be honest, after that unexpected enlightening moment in the men's toilets, I felt much better and ready to move on. Now I could walk past Ed with my head held high. But you know what? Each time we crossed paths, I still felt my heart ache a little. Ugh, why was this still happening? Thankfully, I had Jim around to cheer me up, and also his little brother John, who started working at the company as an intern in Ed and Ellie's project management department. Right from the first day at work, he had already impressed me, walking into the room with such a bright smile and ran right over greeting everyone, even complimented me on a design I was working on and stuff. I didn't even know that he was Jim's brother at the moment, but I already felt like I could befriend this kid. Our office needed more of this kind of positive energy. He's such a funny kid. He was always telling jokes and sending me memes. Soon, Jim, John, and me had grown pretty close, and we grabbed lunch together most days. John seemed smitten with Ellie. I mean, I couldn't blame him. She's beautiful. He sent her a coffee with a flirty note attached on it, and she took the coffee, but ripped off the note and stuck it onto John's forehead, saying, "This isn't what you're supposed to say to your boss," then walked off. Ouch! The poor kid sulked for the rest of the day and kept on grumbling about how women were hard work. Then Jim got annoyed and said,
Isn't what Ellie said correct? You should just stop it already. She's really not someone appropriate for you to mingle with.
Jim had a point. Not only was she his boss, but dating within the company would just cause more gossip and dramas. And trust me, I knew all about that. But John is on the stubborn side, so he wouldn't give up. He continued to show his affection towards her. One time, he handed her a heart-shaped box of chocolates, and she rolled her eyes at him, then gave them out to the rest of the office. Ed caught sight of that and found out, and everyone could see he wasn't happy about that. I mean, she is his sister and all, so he was always giving John dirty looks and making him do all the boring jobs. One time over lunch, John was annoyed because Ed had given him a bunch of work to do over the weekend. So he said to me,
"Oh my God, Bella. I don't understand what you ever saw in Ed, but thank God we're all done with him now. You deserve so much better."
Then he patted Jim while he was sipping on his coffee and almost caused him to choke on it. Then said,
"See? Look at our Jim. He's nice. He's handsome. He's right in front of you. What are you waiting for?"
Jim quickly glared at him, then smiled at me, joking,
"Excuse me for my dumb little brother."
I giggled. These two really had helped me through all the tough times, and I was so grateful to have them both around. But things were about to change, as Jim was assigned for a month-long overseas business trip. I can't deny that I felt kinda worried about being at work without him there. Suddenly, I felt nervous and kind of empty imagining the long month ahead. But at least I still had John. He would keep me sane. I just hoped Ed wouldn't cause me any issues, as dealing with them without Jim having my back would be tricky. The night before Jim's flight, the three of us had dinner, and John kept on pushing Jim to drive me home after that. On the drive home, I joked with him about how I actually felt nervous that he'd be absent for a while. He looked all serious, but didn't say anything back, like he was thinking something. I had to clear things up, so I said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm just joking. Come on, smile for me. I won't get to see this smile for another month, right?" He gave me this soft look, then said,
"I'll be back soon. Just wait for me."
When we arrived at my front door, I wished him a safe travel, and he waved, then drove away. But as I was on the porch step, rummaging through my purse to find my door key, I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. Startled, I turned around to see Jim. I was stuttering. Jim? Why? He cut me off.
"Don't say anything. Just listen to me first, Bella. I love you."
Hey, my name is Erin, and as you can see, I'm just your normal 18-year-old college girl. But my friends who know me well know that I'm not a girly girl. If given the choice of a shopping trip or beer pong, well, then there's no contest. All through high school, I was known as the prank queen. One time, this girl teased me about my sneakers, so I put a real-life spider in her lunchbox. She totally freaked out. It was so funny. Another time, my teacher gave me a totally unjust C on my essay, so when she wasn't looking, I placed her coffee mug upside down. As soon as she picked up the mug, coffee spilled all over the table and her clothes. I ended up with a week's worth of detention for that, but it was so worth it. So, yeah, even though I was out of high school now, my mischievous nature wasn't going anywhere. I didn't even feel like I needed to change or be more mature because my life was still going perfect. I always had my longtime boyfriend Zach and my bestie Jace on my side. We went to the same college together. Me and Jace even moved out to live independently. Trust me, college life was worth 12 years of waiting. I'm a sociable and active girl, while Zach is pretty handsome and great at sports, so we soon became a popular and beloved couple at college. We were even given prom king and prom queen crowns for freshmen. I could see people admired us any time we were together. It was like our love was a typical relationship that they always wished for. Only I knew that deep down inside, Zach's feelings for me were changing. We seemed to argue all the time, and at the root of it was the fact that I wasn't gentle like most other girls. Ugh. He used to see me as the most interesting and attractive girl in the world. What happened? Once, he took me to a party to celebrate his basketball team's win. We cheered a lot, and at a point I was so excited that I jumped on the table and drank wine with the boys. Everyone around was cheering with joy, But Zach wasn't happy. Then later, when I was getting in his car ready for him to drive me home, I asked him, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy you won?" He replied,
"You're an embarrassment. No one else's girlfriend was down in wine and cheering at the top of their voice. Why can't you just be gentle, like your friend Jace?"
I was fuming. So fuming, in fact, that I got out of his car, slammed the door shut, and walked home. It was such an outrage comparing me with another girl. Not to mention that Jace is the complete opposite of me. She's super quiet and introverted. You know what they say, opposites attract. This is so true, as Jace and I are the best of friends. But there's no way I could be gentle like her. If he wanted me to be more like her, why didn't he consider himself to be as sweet and smart as her boyfriend, Jay? I arrived home to find Jace sitting in tears on her bed. Oh, my gentle, weak girl. That night must be Black Friday for both of us. So I hugged her and asked her what was wrong. She replied, "Jay's changed, Aaron. He doesn't like my meekness and wants a more vibrant relationship. In fact, he wants me to be more like you. He said I should be active and strong like you are. Now I don't know what to do." I said, "Oh, God, boys are so confusing." You know what? Zach said the same thing to me. He wants me to be gentle like you. Jace looked at me with surprising eyes. Really? He did? I know, so hilarious, right? We have to do something to make them realize our true value. But what can we do? And once again, my prank-minded brain came up with an extraordinary idea. And I told her, "I know, Jace. We can swap boyfriends." "No, Aaron, I don't like Zach. And from when you have eyes for Jay?" Hey, don't get it wrong. I just want my Zach. So here's the plan. We will annoy our boyfriends so they won't want to hang out with us for a few days. Then we'll take this time to strike and flirt with each other's boyfriends. Then, just when they thought they're getting close to us, we'll be super annoying. Then they'll realize just how amazing their actual girlfriends are. Talk about an amazing plan, huh? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Jace was hesitant at first, but she eventually came up with my prank. As usual, our boys would soon come back as their old selves. I put my part of the plan into action by asking Zach over to watch the new episode of his favorite show on Netflix. Then, during the show, I ate popcorn really loudly, then continued to make comments and laugh while he was trying to concentrate. Eventually, he snapped and said,
"Are you crazy? I'm trying to watch this."
I replied, "What? You can't stand me anymore or something?" We argued a little bit. Then he said,
"You know what? You're annoying. Why can't you be nice, delicate, and gentle for just a moment?"
Then he stormed out of the room and left. I immediately texted Jace. Mission completed. As for Jace, she went out with Jay. But whenever he asked her what she wanted to do or eat, etc., she replied, "Whatever," to everything. It soon drove him crazy because he didn't know what to do to please her. That was classic. When Jace kept shaking her head when he gave her options for what to eat, he got furious and drove her straight home. OMG, I couldn't stop laughing. So the first step was successful. Next, we needed to approach each other's boyfriends. A couple of days later, I found an excuse to meet Jay. He was a computer genius, so I messaged him on Facebook. "Hi, Jay. You know a lot about computers, right? Can you help me, as my laptop won't connect to the Wi-Fi and I have an assignment due?" Then he replied,
Sure. Just take a picture of it and send it over."
So I replied, "Can I bring it to your place? You gotta help me. I don't know what to do." Well then, of course, he said yes. So I wore a cute outfit and went over there. I kept touching his arm and praising him. Then, when he became more open to me, I started to tell him how lonely and empty I was as Zach and I were over.
"Oh yeah? How come?"
He raised an eyebrow. I sighed out. "He thinks I'm too loud and boisterous." I tried to fake my tears. "Am I annoying, Jay?" He was surprised.
"No, you're not. You're an active, outgoing, and interesting girl. Don't let his judgment bother you.
Ha! So my tears worked. So I just pretended to cry harder. He frantically said he knew how to cheer me up. Then he took me to the amusement park. I laughed loudly in the middle of the roller coaster queue, let my ice cream smudge my face, and intentionally didn't wipe it clean. Then I demanded he win me a teddy on the beanbag throwing stall game. But every time he threw the beanbag, I shouted out and clung onto his arm. I knew boys hate being stuck and nagging all day. Like, really, really hate it. Soon, he would realize how awesome Jace was. Talking about Jace, she came to find Zach at the gym, but pretended like it was just a chance meeting. She asked him to show her how a treadmill worked, then used the same way as mine for Zach to ask her out. They went to the cinema to cheer her up. She refused to see the action film he was longing to see, as it was too noisy, said no to any movie he suggested, then eventually ended up in a chick flick. But right at the climax of the film, she complained it was too dark and crowded in there, and made him leave early. How ridiculous! LOL. He must be so annoyed. Then I told her to hit Zach where it hurt, his basketball match. Jace convinced him to take her along to his game, but she just sat there scrolling through her phone instead of watching the match. She didn't cheer him when he won a point, and immediately after the game finished, she asked him to take her home, causing him to miss the post-game gathering. Good work, Jace. He'd come running back to me in no time. I know you're probably thinking this plan was crazy, but it really worked. Jace showed up on our doorstep with flowers for Jace. Their love story had been given the refreshment it needed. Now, I just had to wait for Zach to realize what he's been missing. Only, to my horror, Zach wasn't messaging me. He was still messaging Jace. She ended up sending a picture of her with Jay and told him she was happy with her boyfriend and didn't have time for annoying people like him. Then, the next day, Jace arrived home all flustered. She told me that Zach had been waiting for her outside of her class, then told her he wanted a chance to take her on a date. What? He was technically still my boyfriend. How could he do this to me? Worse still, he was ignoring all of my messages. So I showed up at his house and wouldn't budge until he answered the door. He looked sheepish as he said,
Aaron, our relationship hit a dead end. You're acting ridiculous, and I know you hung out with another guy behind my back. Meanwhile, a wonderful girl came to see me play basketball instead of you. She's the girl for me, not you.
At this point, I had to say the truth. Zach, you don't know what you're talking about right now. Listen, it was all just a setup so you could see what you were missing. It's worked for Jace. Her relationship is stronger than ever. And to my surprise, he replied,
I know. I overheard you discussing it with Jace in the library. At first, I found you so cute because you were trying to save our love, and I just wanted to please you, so I pretended not to know. But then, I realized something. I don't love you anymore. Instead, I love Jace. And thinking about it, I guess I have for a while. She's like a little, arrogant cat that I want to pamper and take care of. You know, I've always liked cats.
What? She's not even arrogant. She only acted that way as part of the plan, I shouted.
I don't care. All I know is I love her, not you.
Ugh! I can't believe it. What have I done? Because of my stupid prank, I've lost my boyfriend to my best friend. What am I meant to do now? Hey, Haley here. So, in the last episode, my boyfriend Eric was spotted by a record representative, Will, from LA. At first, I'm ashamed to say I was so jealous of his success, but then he told me that he had turned the offer down. At first, I was so surprised by his decision, but then I felt guilty, as I was part of the reason that made him decide to give up on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I rectified this by racing to the airport and persuading Will to give him another chance. And luckily, he agreed. But Eric only had 5 days to prepare. Then he had to come to LA. So we decided to make the last 5 days together memorable. On the last day before Eric was off, We went together to the giant wheel, and Eric promised me that he would be back and help me achieve my dream to become a professional singer. Now, Eric's leaving today. I went with Eric and his family to the airport. I couldn't stop crying as I hugged him goodbye. He said,
"I'll see you soon, Haley."
Then he kissed me on my forehead. This only made me cry even more, and his mom comforted me in her arms. So that was it. Eric was going to LA to be a star, and I was staying here and focusing on swing club. We can make this long-distance thing work, right? Luckily, I had Anna around. We grew really close and hung out all the time. Crazy, huh? When she wasn't acting all jealous, she was the sweetest girl. Kurt also hung out with us sometimes, but I was still mad at him. He'd never actually apologized to me for the way he spoke to me. He just joined our lunch table one day and acted like everything was fine. As good as it is to have Kurt as a friend again, he's been acting weird. Sometimes he brought me coffee and put it on my desk with all these notes stuck on it, like a special drink for a special girl, K. I always tried to remove the notes before Anna noticed them, as I didn't want her to get the wrong idea again. As for Eric, I understand he's a busy guy, but he barely ever answered his phone. It was so frustrating. I just wanted to hear his voice. The only way I could see and hear him was through his song cover videos that his agency uploaded on YouTube. One day, after swing club, I stayed behind. I was sitting at the piano and scrolling through some old pics of Eric and me when I realized Kurt was standing behind me. He was just staring at me. It was kinda weird. I said, "Oh, hi Kurt, I didn't realize you were there." He replied,
"Haley, he left you here so he could chase his dreams. Now, he doesn't even call you. That's so selfish. You should be with someone who stays by your side. Someone like me."
I stuttered. "Kurt, He cut me off and continued,
"I will never leave you like he did."
And then he held my hand and looked deep into my eyes. Oh my God, I was shocked. Why me? Didn't he know that Anna liked him? So I pulled back my hand and told him that I was still with Eric, and I hoped he respected that. He told me to think about it, then give him an answer after we finished filming the upcoming music video. Oh, yes. Our club was going to film a music video for a song cover, and the leading actors were Kurt and me. There was one scene where Kurt was supposed to kiss my cheek. Of course, I didn't agree. The last thing I wanted was for Eric as well as Anna to misunderstand us when they saw that, so I asked the director to change it to hugging. The day of the video arrived, and it was such a buzz. I loved my outfit, and I was having so much fun. But then, that scene arrived, and when I went to hug Kurt, but he lunged forward and kissed me. On my lips! Oh my God! How could he? I was mad at him, but I couldn't make a scene just because of a kiss. It would affect the film crew, and it would be so unprofessional. So I just went through it. I took a glance at Anna, and I could see how disappointed she was. Then she immediately left the set. While I felt very uncomfortable, the director was so pleased that Kurt was going off script. He said it made the music video more interesting. But I was so mad. He not only forced me to kiss him, but also made Anna misunderstand me. After the music video, I texted Anna to meet me at a cafe near the school. She showed up looking so sad, and I felt dreadful. I bought her a latte and a blueberry muffin, her favorites. Then I explained to her how Kurt had gone off script without discussing it with me first. Anna suddenly turned to the windows, looked into the distance, and replied with a sad tone, "That sucks. But I believe you. I've seen the way he looks at you. Anna, you need to tell him how you feel." "Maybe," she sighed. I don't know. I was relieved that Anna and I were still friends, but I was still furious with Kurt. How dare he do that to me? It wasn't right. Besides, he knew I was still with Eric. So the next day after the club, I went up to Kurt and told him we needed to talk. "Kurt, I don't have feelings for you. You are my best friend. Please don't destroy our friendship." Kurt got angry and yelled,
"But I don't want to be just your friend. I want to be more than that. Please, Haley, just give me a chance. I will show you that I'm much better than Eric."
I replied, "Please, stop it. I love Eric. I will never be with you. Anna likes you. You should be with her. This made him even madder, and he shouted,
What are you doing? You hate me so much that you have to push me away to another girl? Unbelievable!
And then he stormed off. Oh my God, why was he so stubborn? Why wouldn't he listen to me? And now he acted like I was the one in the wrong. That's so frustrating. That night, I called Anna and confided in her. After learning about Kurt's anger at me because I tried to put the two of them together, she said, if I were Kurt, I would be angry like that too. But don't be mad at him anymore. I will help you two make up. I don't know how Anna did it, but a few days later, Kurt came up to me and apologized. After that, our friendship was restored, and he never mentioned his feelings towards me again, although he did wince every time I mentioned Eric. Talking of Eric, I missed him so much, especially since the summer vacation. There were days when I just laid down on my bed and listened to his cover songs over and over again, all day long. I also read every comment from the audiences under each video. All are compliments for him, which made me very happy and proud of him. Although Eric and I rarely spoke, and I was usually the one who called first, every time I heard his voice, I felt fully charged. I could tell from his voice that he missed me too. Then one day, I was lying on my bed listening to music when my phone suddenly rang. It was Anna. She asked me,
Did you hear the news?
Eric is about to debut. I accidentally saw his name on a poster in the street. I was surprised and excited. Finally, my boy could reach his dream. I immediately called Eric, and fortunately, this time he picked up. I excitedly asked him, Are you about to debut? Eric said he was chosen to perform the opening performance of a famous artist's concert in LA. He continued,
I wish you could attend. I miss you so much. You should come here.
Hearing Eric say that made my heart filled with joy. To be honest, I also missed him like crazy, and I couldn't wait to see him again. But then suddenly, at that moment, an idea popped into my mind. I would surprise him. So I replied, Oh, what a shame. I really want to see you perform, but I have a swing club concert then. His voice was low.
That's all. So don't worry. When I'm free, I'll fly back to meet you.
After Eric hung up, I eagerly called Anna and Kurt and invited them to go to LA with me. They both happily agreed. Eek! This was so exciting! I booked a flight, hotel, and prepared my belongings. I couldn't wait to see Eric's face when I surprised him. We arrived in sunny LA. Anna and Kurt went to the hotel, and I hopped in a taxi straight to Eric's house. I'd sent him a few care packages, so I knew his address. I went to Eric's door and rang the bell, but no one answered. So, even though I was super sad, this wouldn't have the same surprise effect. I sat on the doorstep and called him. After learning that I was in LA, Eric was a bit surprised, but immediately he happily said,
I just moved to a new house closer to my company to facilitate practice. I'll send you the new address.
I eagerly waited for his address to come through. Only 20 minutes passed, and he still hadn't sent it. So I called him again, only this time Will picked up and told me that Eric was urgently rehearsing for his upcoming performance, so he couldn't take the call. I felt so disheartened. I'd come all this way to see him, and now it felt like it had all been for nothing. I knew Eric was busy, but I just told him I was here in LA. So why couldn't he have grabbed a minute and explained to me that he had to rehearse? Surely he owed me that at least. I missed him so much, and I just wanted to see him, but I was beginning to feel he didn't want to see me.
Hey guys, I'm Vanessa, and I want to tell you about my first love. So, do you all remember your first love? Yes, right? I mean, come on. How could you ever forget that first time butterflies in the tummy feeling, hand holding, and that kiss? In the heat of first love, it's easy to believe this will last forever and be a true fairy tale. Only so many first loves lead to a messy breakups that turn into a nightmare. My first love was with a boy named Julian, but you'll have to stick around to find out if our love story was a fairy tale dream or a fairy tale doom. Julian and I started off as friends, best friends. He lived across the street from me and our families were close. We hung out all the time, so much so that our parents teased that we'd get married one day. At the time, I thought, no way. But we were just kids back then. Then, when I was about 10, I started to look at him differently. He was so cute and sweet, and I thought about him all the time. He liked me too, right? I mean, he bought me my favorite candy, let me play video games with him, and stuck up for me when these boys from school teased me. And then when I was 15, Julian and I were at our favorite spot. It was a really big old tree in the middle of the park. We went there loads and would lean against the tree trunk, do our homework, listen to music with one headphone, read books, basically anything relaxing. That's when he told me the shocking news. His dad had a new job in Germany, and they were moving there. What? How could this be? I was so surprised, I started crying. I expected him to comfort me, but instead he took out a pocket knife and started to carve on the tree. When he finished, he said, "Ta-da! How does it look?" He'd carved J Heart V in it. Oh gosh, he loved me too. I felt myself turn bright red and didn't want him to see me like that. So looking downward, I went to punch his arm but punched his face by mistake. Oops. Julian held his face and yelled, "Vanessa, what was that for?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Julian, I feel the same, I told him. We both started laughing, then we pinky promised each other that we would keep in touch. He took my hand and told me, "Ness, I'll come back for you, I promise." Then he leaned in and kissed me. And wow, it was truly magical. And then he left. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. I didn't really have any other friends, and I was so bored and lonely. I lived for my video calls with Julian. They were the only thing keeping me going. Telling him stuff that happened at school, such as how my math teacher wore the same hideous floral dress all week, made me feel like he was still there. Things went on like that for a while. It slowly became a habit for us to have a video chat at least twice a week. But then a couple of days after my 16th birthday, things changed. It was a normal Sunday morning and I woke up and went to wash my face. Ah! There were red spots all over my cheeks. I screamed so loudly that I woke everybody up. Even my neighbors had to run over and ask what the scream was about. My parents took me to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a disease called lupus. For all of you who don't know what it is, it's a skin disease that causes rashes or sores. In my case, it was all over my cheeks, the same as what my grandma had. Worst of all, there was no cure. The doctors could only improve the way my skin looked, prevent scarring, and help me feel better overall. This couldn't be happening. Why me? When we got home, I ran right upstairs to my room and stared into the mirror. I'd gone from pretty to ugly in the space of a day. It wasn't fair. And then suddenly my phone rang. It was Julian. Oh no, in all the drama, I'd forgotten about our planned video call. I couldn't let him see me like this. I was so exhausted with all this lupus stuff that I couldn't think of a solution. So I just turned my phone off. I texted him the next day that I was busy so I couldn't FaceTime with him. This carried on for weeks. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Then he texted me saying that he got the message loud and clear, that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. I texted him back telling him this wasn't the case and I'd just been super busy. But the damage was done. He stopped calling me after that and even unfriended me on Facebook. And that was it. I lost my best friend and also my first love, all because I couldn't cope with my new appearance. Little by little, I was shutting myself off and pushing everyone around me away. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Instead, I wanted to hide away from the world. Each day, I'd watch my classmates hang out together and I'd walk off by myself and go to my favorite tree, lean against the trunk, close my eyes, listen to some sad songs, and remember all the good times I had with Julian. This was basically part of my daily routine during the whole 4 years of high school. School finished and I moved away to college. Things got better. I made a few friends who accepted me for the way I looked and slowly, I started to accept it too. There was this one tree on campus. It looked just like the one back at home, so I went there all the time. One day, I was sitting there reading a book when this guy in a baseball cap started measuring the ground. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Excuse me, can you please move?" I was confused, so I asked, sure, but why? The guy replied, "Oh,
The college is going to build a new cafeteria here, so we have to chop down this tree.
What? They wanted to chop down my favorite spot on campus just so that they could build some stupid cafeteria? No way! Who was this guy anyway? And didn't anyone ever tell him it was rude not to look people in the eyes when talking to them? I gave him a piece of my mind. You architects are all the same. You never give a damn about what you have to destroy to build an ugly building. Leave this tree alone or I'll chop you down. Then I gave him a really dirty look. He just shrugged and carried on measuring. This made me so mad that I kicked him in the butt, causing him to fall onto the ground. His cap fell off and whoa, it couldn't be. Julian? Was that really him? But how? Wasn't he in Germany? Why was he here? And why didn't he recognize me? I mean, I had a different haircut and all, but I didn't think I've changed that much. Or was it because of my lupus? Suddenly, I heard him say,
What the? Are you mad? What's wrong with you?
Oh gosh, I'd totally forgotten that he was still lying on the ground. I mumbled out a sorry and immediately rushed back to my dorm. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, all I could think about was Julian. He was so handsome and so tall. How could he have become so good looking? Why did this stupid disease pick me? There was my first love right in front of me after all those years apart. But because of my disease, he didn't know who I was. He'd blossomed and I hadn't. Maybe it was for the better that Julian didn't recognize me. If he knew this was how I look like now, oh boy, I didn't even want to imagine how embarrassed I would be. So, okay, let's just put it aside for now. What I first needed to do was save my tree. There's no way I was letting the college chop it down. I did some research and found out that the construction would begin in a week. So, I had time to convince as many students as I could to protest against it. And when the day came, I had about 20 people with me. We all held signs and said, "Save the tree" and "Stop the chop." The head of campus, Julian, and the construction workers were trying to make us leave, but we were persistent. At the end, they had to push back the construction dates. One of us remained by the tree at all times, come rain or shine. It was exhausting and cold, but it was worth it when the tree was saved. Then, one day when I was on tree guarding duty, my friend rushed over to me and excitedly told me that the college was going to change the location of the new building. That was such great news. Apparently, Julian had told them that the ground was more suitable in another location. Why would he help us all of a sudden? Did he have a change of mind? I went to class with those questions that kept bugging my mind. And right after school was out, I came over to the tree again, and to my surprise, I saw Julian standing next to it. I walked towards him and asked, "Why did you convince them to change the location of the building? I mean, we really appreciate it, but why the change of heart?" Julian froze for a second and then said,
Hi everyone. Have you ever had someone get revenge on you? It's not fun, right? Well, this is my story about revenge, but with a twist. You won't believe who my prankster turned out to be. Oh, let me introduce myself. I'm Audrey, and I'm 24. To say I've had an unhappy life would be an understatement. Firstly, my dad ditched my mom for another woman. And not long after that, my mom passed away from a serious illness. Basically, my entire life fell apart in a matter of months, and I was still too young at that time. It was tough growing up, and I always think that my life could never turn the page again. But on one fine day, someone popped into my life and changed everything. His name was Jim, and he was 7 years older than me, and he seriously turned my life around. He lived in another city, but he often came to my city on business trips. We fell for each other quickly. That happiness didn't last long, though. One day I was working in the clothes store when a girl around the same age as me came in. She wanted my help to choose some dress, but she was pretty rude to me and I kept catching her staring at me with evil eyes. Who was she? And why was she treating me like that? Finally, after about 2 hours, she made up her mind and picked up only a tie that she wanted to buy for her husband instead. I was relieved to get rid of her, but shocked when I saw the name on her credit card. Jim Stewart. Her husband had the exact same name as my boyfriend. What a coincidence. She must have caught me staring at the card because she suddenly said, "Yes, Jim is my husband. Now stay away from him." What? Her husband? My Jim. Before I even had a chance to react, she turned to everyone in the store and said, "This girl is a gold digger, and she's trying to break up my marriage." I was shocked. I tried to explain that it wasn't true, but she wouldn't listen to me. She just stormed out, and I was left standing there hearing people whispering about me. It was the most humiliating moment of my life. I immediately ran to the staff room and called Jim. I was really hoping it had all been a big misunderstanding, but I could tell from Jim's tone that it was the truth. He told me he'd lied to me, and that he actually lived in the same city. He just made up the business trip stuff so he wouldn't have to see me often. Then he said, "Audrey, I honestly love you. I'm serious about us." Hang on, was he for real? It was ridiculous. I was disgusted by him. How could he treat me like that? I hung up and felt horrified. It brought back horrible memories of the woman who stole my dad away from my mom. I didn't want to be that woman. The next day, I moved out of the house Jim had rented for me. I didn't want to be associated with that loser anymore. But life works in mysterious ways. The day I moved into my new house, I saw Jim's wife. And you won't believe it. It seemed that she just moved in next door too. Was this some kind of joke? As soon as she saw me, she smirked and said, "Wow, what a coincidence. Hello, neighbor. I'm Linda." Seeing her unpacking her stuff all by herself, I couldn't help but wonder where Jim was. But then I thought maybe Linda had ended things with him and had moved here alone. I hope so anyways. I'd hate to have Jim as a neighbor. So that's when my new life began. And it has been crazy ever since. From that first week of living there, Linda started pranking me. It all began with her throwing trash into my yard. I even caught her doing it, and she just grinned and said, "Oops, my hand slipped." Then she walked away laughing. It made me furious. And that was just the beginning. One weekend, a delivery guy rocked up on my porch with 10 extra large pizzas. I tried to explain I hadn't ordered them, and that's when Linda appeared at my door and said, "Oh, thanks for ordering me dinner, Audrey. I'm starving." Then she grabbed 5 of the pizzas and ran to her house, leaving me there with a bill of $100. Jeez, it was so annoying, and I had no option but to pay. Linda was too much. Seriously. As much as her pranks drove me up the wall, I also felt sorry for her. I knew what it was like to have someone you love stolen away from you. She must have hated me so much for ruining her marriage, even though it hadn't been my fault. I decided to just put up with her pranks. She'd get over it eventually, and it's not like they were harming me, right? Well, one night I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone and was surprised to see a young guy standing there with a poster that said, "I agree to be your boyfriend. Come out with me." I was totally puzzled and told him he had the wrong house, but then he showed me the address on the other side. It was my address. What on earth? I told him I wasn't interested, but he tried to grab my hand and said, "Come on, girl, don't be shy." I told him if he didn't leave me alone, I'd call the police. So luckily he ran away. Needless to ask, I knew for sure that was Linda's joke. But this time she had taken it too far. I decided to go over and have a word with her once and for all. As I was walking to her house, I saw someone familiar on the other side of the road. I couldn't believe it. It was my dad? So many years had passed, and he'd completely changed. But there was no doubt it was him. I suddenly blurted out, "Dad?" But I didn't know what to do next. I was just thinking about my next move when I felt someone behind me. I turned around and saw Linda. She just smirked at me and walked away. What was her problem? Did she hear what I just said? I was so shocked at seeing my dad, I ran back into my house. I hated him for what he'd done to my mom. But he was still my dad, and I wanted to know if he was okay and what he was doing here. I barely slept that night as I couldn't stop thinking about my dad. The next morning, I was sitting by the window when he appeared again. This time, he was with Linda, and she was holding his arm. What was she doing with my dad? Why were they so close? Later that day, I saw him again, and this time, he and Linda were hugging. OMG, were they dating? Maybe Linda had heard me call him dad, and now she was flirting with him to truly get revenge on me. This was too much. The thought of Linda as a stepmom made me want to puke. I waited and waited, but he was inside her house and there was no sign of him leaving. Eventually he left, and as soon as he was in his car, I ran over to her house. I was shaking as I knocked on the door, and as Linda opened it, I said, "You are way too much. Can you just stop with the revenge already?" Linda looked confused and said, What the heck are you talking about? Linda still didn't seem to get it. And I was about to explain when I heard footsteps. I turned around and my dad was right there. He said, "What's the matter, Linda? Why are you fighting with this stranger?" Huh? Stranger? Didn't he recognize me? Then Linda butted in and said, "It's okay, Dad. We're just having a misunderstanding here." What? Dad? Is he your dad? Really? I stammered. "Yeah, why? What's the matter?" He said, "Linda, you don't need to lie to me. I know you're dating my dad to get revenge on me," I continued. "Whoa, hold on. What do you mean your dad?" Linda gasped. At that, my dad looked confused too and walked to me and asked if he could look at my hand. After seeing my birthmark, he started crying and hugging me. "Audrey, it's you. It's really you." I didn't know how to react, so I just let him hug me. It had been so long since anyone had held me like this. Ever since my mom had died, I'd tried to be strong and keep it together, but suddenly I couldn't hold back anymore. I burst into tears in his arms. We stood like that for a long time, and eventually he took me into Linda's house and told me the story. It turned out, after he left me and my mom, he got tricked by that woman, and he was so ashamed, he decided to move to another city and start over. He was working hard on a construction site one day when he got injured, so he ended up in hospital, and that's when he met Linda. She'd been in a car accident and needed a blood transfusion urgently. She has a pretty rare blood type, but luckily my dad had the same type and he volunteered to give her a transfusion. After that, they became quite close, and seeing as Linda had lost both her parents in the car accident, my dad eventually adopted her. I couldn't believe it. My dad had been through so much, and this whole time, I thought he was off living his life with a rich woman. I felt so bad for him and decided to leave the past behind and forgive him. As for Linda, she was also left confused by this coincidence, so she left the room to process everything, while I and Dad took time to catch up on our lives. Later, Linda prepared dinner for us three, and before we digged in, she shyly grabbed my hand and said, "Audrey, I've been so awful to you. I'm sorry. I know you aren't the one responsible for my divorce, but I still felt upset, and that's why I played all those pranks. That was so childish, right? Please forgive me, sister." We laughed it off, then hugged each other to make peace. I couldn't believe it. After all these years of being lonely, suddenly I had a sister, and my dad was back. My life had finally turned a corner, and I almost laughed at the thought that it was all because of meeting Jim. At least one good thing had come out of that disastrous relationship.